Welcome to the Strange and Mysterious World with William and Lee.
And welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of Strange and Mysterious World. And Happy New Year to all of our viewers and listeners. It's going to be a fantastic year, 2025. Hey, Will?
Yeah, man. Looking forward to 2025.
You don't sound too enthusiastic.
I don't know. I just had a really shit year. I don't know. But I get better. But anyway, but Bibu Dismera, that we had did a podcast on before, he said that in March is the Yuga shift, when the huge Yuga shift happens into this Theta Yuga, whatever's after the Kali Yuga. So it's supposed to be coming out of the Dark Ages. But he says that there's going to be huge amount of war and possibly a cataclysm, but it's mainly a lot of war and stuff like that. So let's see what happens, man. Be interesting.
3 months, man. 3 months. Here we go. All right. So we're going to be bringing on a guest tonight, Steve Taylor from the UK, and he's going to be chatting about time and how we see it, and it's going to be quite interesting. I'll ask him a couple of questions because I don't really know much about the kind of topic. All I know is little odds and ends, but I'll kind of ask him when he comes on.
Well, I read his book and it was absolutely fantastic. It's called The Time Expansion Experience, and I don't want to give it away too much. We'll let him speak for himself, but it's really a really profound book. So I can't wait to talk to him. Thanks for coming on, man.
No, great to be with you.
Yeah, so I read your book and the Time Expansion one, because I see you've written quite a few books.
Yeah,
and I can't wait to get to the other ones. But the Time Expansion was I really enjoyed it a lot.
Great.
Time Expansion Experiences. So I highly recommend that. And and we would love to just chat to you and also first, can you just tell us about yourself, or for our viewers especially, because you were very remarkable, so don't be modest.
I'm English, so we're very modest over here in England.
I was worried about.
It's one of our national traits, modesty. Well, I guess I'm a psychologist by profession, but my field is transpersonal psychology, which I guess is spiritual psychology. A kind of psychology which looks into spiritual transformation and anomalous experiences. It kind of merges into the paranormal. So I investigate near-death experiences. But recently, as related to my book, I've been investigating what I call anomalous temporal experiences, unusual experiences of time, which includes moments when time slows down radically or even seems to disappear, and also moments of precognition in which we may feel that we've glimpsed the future. So that's my role as a lecturer and researcher, but I'm also a poet, a musician, and lots of other things besides.
When I looked at your other books, because I've just finished that one, but I was looking at the other ones, and you help people with awakening experiences as well. They have spiritual awakening, and you've written a whole book about that.
Yeah, I've written a few books about that, actually. Yeah, spiritual awakenings are moments when our awareness expands and intensifies. Normally, we have quite a restricted awareness as human beings, and some people take that for granted. They assume that is awareness. That's the entirety of awareness. But in certain moments, for certain people, awareness can suddenly expand and intensify, as if barriers have broken down or filters have opened up. And then the world becomes a different place. It becomes more real, more beautiful, and our relationship to other people changes. We become more empathic, more compassionate. We have a more global awareness of reality. And it's as if a kind of veil falls away, and we feel that we're in touch, suddenly in touch with a more real reality, if you like, a more intensely vivid reality. And those experiences are usually temporary. They last for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes. But people are afterwards they're changed in some way. You know, their perspective on reality is different. They realize that there is a kind of a harmonious realm of reality which they didn't know was there before. So they know from that point on, they know that their ordinary awareness doesn't tell them the complete story of reality. There is this wider realm out there, and they know that, you know, potentially at least they can get access to it again. But also those moments can become permanent too. They can become stable. You know, a person can shift into an intense state of awareness permanently as their ongoing state, and that's what I would call a permanent state of wakefulness.
Stephen, just a question from my side. You said you deal with people that have near-death experiences, and the question for me is, if you've had a near-death experience, I'm assuming it's probably very similar to the OBEs, the out-of-body experiences, because I mean, we've spoken quite a lot about the OBEs, and I think the people that have experienced these type of incidents have a slightly different, or I shouldn't say slightly, they have a lot different understanding of a reality that really is. Because you're awakening, you've now awakened, and you realize that there's something else beyond what we are understanding now. Do you find that that's the case?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I guess most of the, well, large parts of the world now have a kind of, the paradigm of our cultures is materialistic. We have a certain view of reality, which teaches us that, you know, this is all there is. The material world is all there is. You know, some cultures, maybe earlier cultures, believed in different realms of reality, different kind of subtle or spiritual beings, or different sort of spiritual aspects of our own being. But the materialistic worldview teaches us that those things don't exist. There is only physical reality. That's all there is. So when you have an OBE, and definitely when you have an NDE, a near-death experience, you realize that that's not the case. There are these different aspects of reality. So you no longer accept the materialistic paradigm. And many people, once they've had that experience, they turn to spiritual practices like meditation, or they investigate spiritual traditions, or maybe they become interested in psychedelics because they know that these are means of regaining contact with those wider realities.
Yeah, which is not always the best thing to do, though. I mean, especially if you've had that and you want to try and get back to that state, that could lead to kind of drug abuse and, you know, those kind of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive advocate of psychedelics. I would never recommend them, you know, as a means of attaining spiritual awakening. I think they can give you a glimpse, but I agree. Alan Watts once said, he was asked about psychedelics. You know Alan Watts, the American spiritual teacher and author? Well, he's actually English originally. But he said, somebody asked him about psychedelics, and he said, once you get the message, hang up. In other words, once you've had the glimpse, you don't need to keep going back there. So yeah, I mean, I would not advocate psychedelics except as a kind of, and giving people an initial glimpse of that wider reality.
Because I know, like the people that stay in it permanently, I mean, it can be a form of psychosis, or I mean,
well, there is a difference between psychosis and spiritual awakening. They're sometimes confused, especially by psychiatrists who are not really familiar with spiritual awakening. But spiritual awakening is different. It's a much more stable and integrated state, a much healthier state. In psychosis, people tend to be lost. They may sort of glimpse a wider reality beyond normal awareness, but they're kind of lost in that. They can't integrate it. They may even feel threatened by it because they don't have a stable center. And when people undergo spiritual awakening, and certainly once spiritual awakening becomes stabilized and established and integrated, then people are not frightened of this heightened reality. They become they feel at home. They adjust to it, and their life becomes much richer and more fulfilling. I think one of the problems is that the initial stages of spiritual awakening can be a little bit destabilizing, particularly if a person doesn't understand what's happening. You know, they may think, wow, what's happening to me? Maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm becoming psychotic. You know, I feel different and I don't really understand what's happening. Everything looks more real. And I feel more connected to everything. What's going on? And some of their friends might say, "Hey, what's happened to you? Have you been taking psychedelics or have you gone crazy?" So they, "Oh yeah, maybe I have." But usually, well, in almost every case that I've investigated, people do adjust. It may take a few months, maybe even a few years in some cases, but they do adjust to their new state of awareness, and their
Yeah,
life just become much richer.
because I had a similar experience about 9 years ago. But anyway, we might talk about that later. But anyway, I just wanted to get into your book now. So how did you come to write this book about time expansion experiences?
It came from my own experiences. Fundamentally, I mean, the initial experience I had was once when I was walking in the countryside in Scotland on a kind of windy, stormy night in the middle of nowhere. I was just walking along the coast on my own, and I suddenly had this realization that the scene I was looking at could be 10,000 years ago, or it could be 10,000 years in the future. It would still be exactly the same, and it was exactly the same thousands of years ago, and it would still be exactly the same 10,000 years in the future. And suddenly I felt like I was out of time. I felt like time didn't really exist anymore. I felt like I was 10,000 years in the past. I was 10,000 years in the future. It was as if time kind of opened up into this panorama, and I was no longer restricted to the present. I was kind of, timeless, if you like. So that started me thinking about time and how the human mind relates to time. And then maybe 5 years later, I had a car crash. I was driving along the motorway, and a big truck was on the inside lane and tried to move out into the middle lane without seeing us. And he clipped the back of our car. We started to spin round in the middle of a busy motorway. And as soon as the truck hit us, everything went into slow motion. I remember looking at the cars behind us, and I could see the frightened faces of the passengers, or the drivers of the cars behind us, and the long lines of cars stretching way back. And I also remember thinking very rationally about the situation. I was thinking, oh, wow, this is a very dangerous situation. We could be seriously injured or maybe even killed. But I was thinking very rationally, okay, maybe I can try this. I tried the handbrake. I tried jolting the steering wheel to the left. I tried the brakes, the foot brake, everything. And we continued spinning around. And, as I say, everything was in slow motion. Then at a certain point, luckily, we span towards the left into the crash barrier at the side of the road. And then everything went back into normal time and normal awareness. And I looked at my own body. I think, wow, I'm not injured. And I looked at my wife, and she wasn't injured. The car was, totally had to be written off because it was so badly damaged. But yeah, the whole incident probably lasted 3 or 4 seconds. But in my mind, it lasted much longer. I felt as though it was maybe 40 seconds, 45 seconds, something like that. So again, that made me think about time perception and how the mind creates time. So I started to collect reports from other people. I called this a time expansion experience, and began to collect reports. I found out that the experiences are quite common. Around 3/4 of people have had them at least once. And I began to investigate them and to look into the implications of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've actually had that experience. I almost had an accident when I was driving, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I was going downhill. I was in an old VW Beetle, and those things, the brakes failed. But I was going downhill, and when you're picking up speed, you can't just suddenly turn left or turn right because you're going to roll the car or the vehicle.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, everything's just slow. And I was like very calm and, okay, I want to try this, try that, do this, do that. I got through it pretty, nothing happened, no accident, no nothing, but very close. But you're right, everything just, it almost went into slow motion, and it felt like almost forever. But it was literally like 5-10 seconds. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're 100% right.
That's one of the strange things about the experiences, is that people always report feeling completely calm, even though it's a life-threatening situation. They feel almost a sense of well-being, a kind of serenity.
Yeah.
and that obviously that helps them to deal with the situation, because that enables us to think rationally and to take preventative action.
But it's strange though, because some people that I've spoken to about panicky situations or things like that, they almost go blank. They just sit there and then they don't know what to do, and then the accident happens. So there are some people that actually experience that where it's just like a daze. They can't do anything, and it just
Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, my wife, she was in the car with me, and she didn't have that response at all. She was screaming. She was in a state of terror and trauma. So yeah, not everybody responds in that way.
But why do you think it is? Why do some people have that experience and others don't?
We're special, man.
You describe it in your book very well, but I just want you to just say it so the audience can hear.
Yeah, I speculate about that, and I suggest that these experiences are fundamentally an altered state of consciousness. Some people in an accident situation switch into an altered state of consciousness in which they feel great calmness, in which they can think very rationally and clearly, and in which time also slows down. But not everybody switches into that state of consciousness. Some people remain in a normal state of consciousness and experience terror, and time runs at a normal speed. So it depends on whether a person can switch into that altered state of consciousness. Some people are more susceptible to altered states of consciousness than others. So I guess it depends on that kind of susceptibility.
But I mean, it's like a superpower in a way because, like you described because if you just could be able to turn this thing on, like consciously whenever you wanted, you could like get a lot out of life. Like as you said, there's a whole section in your book about the flow state in sports and some of the best sportsmen in the world. Like they just turn this on, like the racing car drivers, they pop out of their body, they go up bird eye view, they're just watching the car from above, they can see everything like it's like extremely slow motion, like 1 second, like an hour, and they know exactly where to go, what to do, and they're so calm. And it's like you said in the book, you described this one person that was catching the train, and their arm got stuck in the train, and then the whole thing, because the surveillance camera or something, when they watched it on the surveillance camera, it took like the whole incident took 13 seconds or something, but he went into the TEE as you describe it in the book, and he started thinking, oh yeah, I watched this documentary where the kid fell out of the building with the father, and the father died, and the kid survived because they said the kid was so relaxed. So what I must do, I must just relax. So he started relaxing, and then he went under the train, and then he said he started playing all of the movies that he watched, like Indiana Jones and MacGyver and everything, and he got all the techniques of like, okay, now I've got to get under the train, and like leopard crawl, and I must do this thing and that thing. So he processed all of this thing, and he actually survived. And the only thing was that he got this like cut on his arm, but because of this experience, and he was totally calm through the whole thing, he actually survived the train. Like I was going to say train crash, but like the train incident where he almost died getting run over by the train. So I mean, if you could turn that on, you could save your life. I mean, not only that, I mean, imagine that in business and like in meetings and stuff like that, when you're trying to make a huge decision and you can see, your business partner, what do you call it, the person, I mean, I don't know much about business, so I'm just trying to put this in my head, like your adversary, and you're trying to like outrun them in a business meeting, and you could slow it all down, and you could get ahead of your, whatever you're doing in the business meeting, to sports, to imagine when you're fighting with your wife, and then you just slow it all down, and then you're just like, no, okay, now I'm going to say this next, she's going to say that, I'm going to say this, and then you can win the argument because you're just so like fast with your thoughts. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just making a joke. That wouldn't be like you shouldn't be fighting with your wife, but you try to like all the speculation behind it, because you were saying that like scientists have studied this, and some of them say that no, it's like a memory afterwards, like it's a memory afterwards that you're recalling. And so maybe you could go into that, like what the science and like what the things that have tried to debunk it, and some of those experiments, because they had that experiments where they like jumping off a high place, and they're like timing it. They're timing like your reaction, and but
that's right.
That was so stupid, because you're not actually, you know that it's a safe thing. You're jumping off the building. You're gonna. So it's not like really putting yourself into a life life-threatening experience.
No. Yeah, that's yeah, I mean that's the only real previous research in this area is from scientists who try to dismiss time expansion experiences as a kind of retrospective illusion. They say that, when we're in data situations, our brain is full of adrenaline, and so our awareness becomes more heightened. We take in a lot of impressions, and that forms a lot of memories. So when we look back from maybe a few days later or a few months later, it seems like these experiences lasted a long time because we have so many memories of them. But I think that's nonsense, because one reason I think it's nonsense is because so many people reported that they actually did have the opportunity to do things which saved their lives within those 3 or 4 seconds in real time. In their minds, they had so much more time to think about the situation, to take action in a very methodical and sequential way. And they were all sure that it couldn't have taken place if time had been running at a normal speed. They would have died, if time had been running at a normal speed. There was a similar example that I report in the book of a woman who was shot at. A burglar tried to break into a house, and she was 7 months pregnant at the time. But she went onto a balcony and pulled out a replica gun that she had, pointed it at the burglar. But he had a real gun, and he shot at her 4 times. And she said that the 4 shots took maybe 2 or 3 seconds. But in her mind, she had all this time to think about what to do, and she also knew that she was pregnant, so she had to fall in a manner which would not damage her baby. And a bit like the previous guy, she remembered seeing a film where a man had said, if ever you got shot at, you just got to dive to the ground straight away. So she thought, yeah, I remember that film. I'm going to do that. But then she thought, no, oh, hold on, I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't just dive to the ground. I need to think about my baby. So, she had to dive in a very kind of methodical way. But anyway, in her mind, those 2 or 3 seconds lasted at least half a minute, she said. And that kind of preventative action would not have been possible if time had been flowing at a normal speed. And I actually asked people in my research, I asked 200 people who had these experiences whether they thought it could have been a retrospective illusion, or whether they thought that time was actually moving more slowly at that moment. And only 2% of people, or was it 3% of people, said that they thought it could have been an illusion. So almost everybody was convinced that it was a real experience. And as you say, those kind of experiments when people, do bungee jumps, and they're asked to, in the experiment, they're asked to read digits on a kind of a wristwatch which is flashing. And the idea is that if time is really moving more slowly, they'll be able to take in more information, read more digits. Well, they didn't, so people presumed that the time expansion was not real. But as you say, it wasn't a genuine emergency situation.
Yes, and then also you had some other examples of some people saying the adrenaline that goes into your brain like fires it at such a high capacity that everything lights up, like every neuron, every all the electricity in your brain's going so it's like, yeah, if you can explain what was the thing with the adrenaline getting pumped in the brain.
Well, that's one theory about these experiences, that your brain surges with adrenaline. Your brain becomes full of adrenaline. Your awareness becomes heightened, and you take in more perceptions, and you have the feeling that time has slowed down. But that doesn't really fit with the calmness that people feel in these situations. When we're full of adrenaline, we feel kind of anxious. We have this kind of fight or flight response. Everything becomes very tense. But people feel the opposite in these experiences. They are very calm. And also another big factor is that these experiences don't just occur in accidents. They occur in a variety of other situations where people are very calm, like they occur in deep meditation, for example, in moments of deep connection with nature. They occur under the influence of psychedelics. So they don't just occur in accident situations. So states of deep meditation or connection with nature, they're not situations where we're full of adrenaline. They're situations of great calmness.
Also, I mean, you also mentioned it even like in states of that one lady that her husband says she wants to get a divorce. I mean, that could probably also be a bit of adrenaline, I don't know. But, I mean, that wasn't like I suppose it could be a life-threatening because you're like, what's going to happen next with my life and my finances and that. But I mean, it doesn't. You don't. What I'm trying to say is, you don't have to be in a car accident. It's like you just get like
Yeah.
some really bad
I
news.
think
Like
the main thing about it
cancer.
is shock. If your partner suddenly says out of the blue, I want a divorce, or if you hear the news that one of your loved ones has passed away in a phone call, it's a giant shock. And
Mm.
that shock is the main thing. When you have a car accident, it's a giant shock. So the shock is the main thing. It shifts you into a different state of consciousness. It's like a jolt. It's like an electric shock. Suddenly you have this electric shock and you're in a different world. And time is, a different state of consciousness. And time is related to consciousness, as I say in the book.
Yeah.
And in a different state of consciousness, time behaves in a completely different way.
Well, if you believe
Yeah,
what
sure.
the scientists are kind of saying currently with regards to the universe being a holographic universe, some sort of hologram that we're living in, if you believe that type of story, then this kind of makes sense, because if we holograms, some people have got the ability to almost come out of that hologram and manipulate certain things in their life. So time, possibly, you're able to, like think of Neo in the Matrix. It's exactly the same thing. He can stop time. So it's possible. I mean, if you're looking at what the scientists are saying, we're living in a holographic universe, then it's definitely possible that these things can happen.
I guess so. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I'm not a proponent of the kind of holographic universe theory, but I would say, I mean, I do believe that there is a fundamental reality outside our minds. I don't believe that we create reality with our minds entirely, but I do believe that our minds have a big effect on reality and how we perceive reality. I don't think we can get access to fundamental reality because it's always filtered through our minds, and time is like that. I mean, whether time exists fundamentally or not is a big question. A lot of physicists believe that there is fundamentally no such thing as time. A lot of philosophers, like the philosopher Immanuel Kant, he believed the same as well, that time is a creation of the human mind. But, however far you want to take it, it's obvious that our perception of time is generated by our consciousness, and we can change our perception of time by changing our state of consciousness.
Well, how does that, look, obviously, there's a couple of other things that I've seen on YouTube and the internet and those kind of things with regards to time itself. And a lot of people have said that, and astronauts and those guys, that the closer to a magnetic field that you are, so like the Earth's magnetic core, the closer you are, the quicker the time moves. The further away you are, the slower the time moves. So if you're up in space, you actually age a lot slower than you do when you're on Earth because of the closeness to the proximity of the magnetic core. So what do you think of that type of thing?
Well, that's real. Yeah, that's that was Einstein. That was Einstein's relativity. Time is related to gravity and to mass. So if you're out there in space, there's less gravity, so time is moving more slowly. And also depends on speed as well. If you're moving at a higher speed, time moves more slowly. So one of Einstein's famous theories was that if there are two twins, one of them goes out into space in a spaceship traveling at 50% of the speed of light. Then the twin returns to the Earth, maybe 10 years later. Then the twin that went into outer space is younger than the twin who stayed on the Earth because time has been moving more slowly to them. So yeah, it showed that. I mean, this illustrates that time is relative. It's subjective. There's no. I mean, one of the big differences between old physics and new physics was that the old physics of Isaac Newton believed that time was something absolute, and objective. Newton actually said that time flows everywhere in the universe at the same speed, but Einstein showed that that's not true at all. That time varies according to, the laws of relativity, and our psychological time is like that too. It varies according to our state of mind and whatever we're doing, any situation that we're in.
Yeah. So Steve, I really love that the section on the flow state of like the sports and time expansion in sports, and that one cricketer. It's funny because South Africa, we also play cricket. We also cricket nation, but I don't really know. I mean, I used to play at school, but I haven't followed it since since 20 years or whatever. But there was that one cricketer that has actually been labeled the best sportsman in the world because he had an average run rate of 100. Well, no, it was 99 runs per innings.
Yeah.
And that's, firstly, cricket in those days, it's so funny because if you watch a cricket match in those days, they didn't have like all of the sports science and they weren't training that hard. I mean, it was just like a bunch of guys getting around on a weekend playing cricket. Like they probably even had day jobs or whatever. They're probably smoking and like, so cricket those days was nothing like cricket nowadays because the guys nowadays are training every day. They like got diets, they got technology checking what's happening with their health and their heart rate, and it's insane. But he still is like regarded the best batsman of all times.
Yeah.
And
Donald Bradshaw, Bradman, what's the guy's name?
Bradman, Don Bradman.
Yeah, Don Bradman. Yeah. So and I just what fascinated me was that he said in the book that he came out of the army and he actually had bad eyesight because
that's right.
He had he didn't even have good eyesight, and he had to wear glasses or something in the army. But when he played cricket, he never wore glasses, and he slowed the time down in his mind so that he could see exactly where the ball was going. So he had this ability to just like do it on call.
Well, that's my theory. I mean, he was a real anomaly. Don Bradman was by far, the best batsman that's ever played cricket. And not just by a few percentage points, by his average is 100% better than anybody else's ever. His average was 99.94. He only needed 4 in his last innings to get 100 average, but he was out for 0 in his final innings. But anyway, I mean, the next best international average is something like 60, and that's exceptional. So he was like 40 points higher than anybody else in history. And there was one analysis by an Australian statistician which found that he statistically was so much better than everybody else who's ever played his sport that he had to be ranked as the best sportsman of all time. He was much better than Michael Jordan, for example, or Lionel Messi in soccer and so forth. So yeah, it's a big puzzle. Why was he so much better than anybody else? And I think one possible explanation is that he had a slow down sense of time. Yeah, and like you say, he had the handicap of not having a good eyesight. He was not physically very strong either. He was quite a small guy, small built. So I think that applies to all kind of elite sportsmen. It probably does apply to Lionel Messi. It probably applied to Michael Jordan. There was also an American baseball player called Ted Williams, who was a bit like Don Bradman. He was like way above everybody else. And Ted Williams actually coined the phrase "in the zone," because he actually did say that when he was playing baseball, time would slow down. He felt as though he had a lot of time to see the ball as it was coming towards him and to position himself. He actually said that he could see the individual stitches on the ball as it came towards him. And so he actually did, specifically speak about this slow down sense of time. And I think that applies to probably all best sports people. I think they have this ability to get into an altered state of consciousness in which time slows down.
What was so remarkable that story? What is his name? Don Bradman. Bradman was that he would have actually made the 100 runs per average, but on his last game, the crowd was cheering so loudly that his eyes were he was so emotional. He couldn't see anything because his eyes were so full of tears that he just missed the ball and he got out for 0. So he would have actually got his 100 per average, but it was because of his emotions of the crowd. Which I just thought it was such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Steve, so I want to ask you, sir. You've done quite a few books. I just wanted to ask you the question: what is your opinion? So why? So I know you say some people are able to, some people can't. What is your opinion? So you must have formed some sort of your thought on why this happens. What's the crux of the story?
You mean on time expansion experiences?
Yeah. Do you think people are actually manipulating time? Do you think is that your idea?
Yeah. Well, my basic idea is that time time does not exist as an objective, absolute reality. It's totally flexible according to our state of mind. So what we perceive as a normal speed of time is just a construct of our normal state of consciousness. We normally have this feeling that time is running away, moving quite quickly, and it gets faster as we get older. But that's just a product of our normal state of consciousness. And I suggest that there is one fundamental feature of our normal state of consciousness which creates this fast-flowing linear time, and it's a strong boundary. Normally we have this feeling that we're kind of living inside our own minds, our own bodies. The rest of the world is out there on the other side. We're kind of trapped inside our own mental space. So I think that boundary creates our sense of time. So when that boundary fades away and we feel connected to the world, we're no longer separate entities. Our identity becomes more fluid and more connected. Then time starts to slow down. Time kind of opens up. And if we reach a state of complete oneness in which our sense of separation fades away altogether, and we feel completely connected to the world and to other people, then time disappears entirely. Then we have what I call a time cessation experience, when it's almost as if we step outside time, or time just doesn't exist anymore. We kind of step out of the river of time and sit on the riverbank. So that that in a lot of near-death experiences, for example, people say that time just didn't exist. There was no time. Everything was kind of now. The future and the past were part of the now. So I think that's kind of more like the fundamental reality. I think fundamentally, time is not a straight line. Time is kind of panoramic, with the past and the future existing side by side with the present. So I think when we switch into this radically altered state of consciousness, we can gain a glimpse of that, that different time world.
And do you think is there a sort of technique that one can do, perhaps, that you think that's able to get you into that sort of mind or that state?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, we've talked about sports people, athletes. Well, I mean, they do this. I'm not sure whether they do it consciously, but they develop the ability to shift into a different state of consciousness in which time slows down, and it's a lot to do with what you could call a kind of meditative state, a kind of very relaxed but also alert state. I think sports people can train themselves to empty their minds but remain very alert and focused. And that's kind of like the gateway into this state, and interestingly, there's research showing that that people who meditate regularly experience a slowed down sense of time. Time actually does move more slowly to them. So yeah, I think a technique like meditation it softens the boundaries of our minds, and therefore it kind of expands time. And there's also a connection to martial arts as well. There are some martial arts like Aikido or karate. They cultivate a state of empty mind in order to slow down time, and because it's taken for granted that if you slow down time, you have this massive advantage. You can position yourself more easily. You can anticipate your opponent's actions. So yeah, I think it is possible to a degree.
Now, it's also this interesting you said about the meditation thing, because you said in the book that there was a study where they took a whole bunch of people that were they took like a whole bunch of people, and they said, you're going to meditate for half an hour every day, and then they showed them a documentary afterwards that was 5 minutes long, and then they said, can you tell us how long this documentary is? And they all gave like a very high number, like like maybe it was well, I don't know what the number was, but just say they said it was 10 minutes or whatever. And when he said that, I was like thinking, but it was probably a bloody boring documentary, and the poor bastards were just like, oh my God, this thing's so slow, so long. But then they gave the same documentary to other people that were like, that didn't do the meditation test. They were just ordinary people, and they could get it closer to the time. They just said like, it was about like maybe 6 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever. So that was like quite a huge, significant thing that was found. Like I thought that was quite interesting.
I think that is it's a very significant finding. There was another study that showed that people who meditate regularly and who've been meditating for many years, they don't feel as pressurized by time. They don't feel that time is running away, and that they report, as we said before, it's a normal thing for human beings to feel that time is going more quickly as we get older. Well, people who've been meditating for a long time, they don't necessarily have that feeling. Time seems to be more kind of spacious to them. So yeah, I think not necessarily meditation, but any activity that kind of relaxes and focuses our minds, but also makes us alert and attentive. I think there are lots of meditative type activities like walking in the countryside, walking in nature, swimming or running. I think they can help too.
Yeah, this is a very interesting theory in the beginning of your book, or not theory, that you said that because there's there's a thought that why time speeds up while we're getting older is because it's relevant to like how long we've been on Earth. So like if you've been on Earth for like 4 years, like a week is going to be very long for you in terms of like the actual percentage of the time you've been alive for, compared to if you've been on the Earth for like, because I know I also feel like now, like I feel like life's been up. I mean, this year, talking about just in the new year, it went so fast. It's probably the fastest year I've ever experienced. It just was gone. And then there's that thought that you discussed in your book that it's because now I've been alive for 40 years. So like a year, it's a smaller percentage of my life than when I was 5. So it's obviously going to be, I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but so
Yeah,
it's gonna feel quicker. But
Mm.
then there was, I don't know if it was you were saying this or there was another thought that it was that um it's because of the experiences you have. So like when you're a child, everything's new to you. So like everything's a new experience. So time's gonna go slower because it's all new and fascinating. You can be more absorbed into what's happening because it's all new. Instead of like when you grow up, now you're in a time rhythm and a routine. You're going to the same job, you're
Mm.
driving the same route, you're speaking to the same people. So it becomes so automatic that you're not having these new experiences so much that everything just goes so quickly because it's almost like you're just in a dazed, you're just living life in autopilot. That's
Mm.
why you say when you go on holiday, you got to go, if you want your holiday to go longer, you got to go new places. Like your experience, you said you were living in Germany for like a year and it was so new, everything was so, and you were learning a new language and everything. And you came back to England and you were like, geez, everyone's in the same job. They're doing the same things. I mean, geez, it's been a long time. It's been like, it feels like 10 years. These people are the same.
Yeah.
It's been a year.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a relationship between time and newness. Between time and unfamiliarity. So new experiences definitely slow down time, and that's fundamentally about information processing. The more information our minds process, the slower time goes. So as you get older, your life is more familiar. The experiences you have, you've repeated them so many thousands of times, and there's less newness in your world, and therefore inevitably there's less information processing, and therefore time seems to speed up. I mean, I think the proportional theory, the idea that when you're 4, 1 year is 25% of your life, so it's a massive figure. That's maybe a factor too, but I think the information processing is probably the main factor. And as you say, that's why when we do go to new places and have new experiences, it does slow down time. I was only when I went to Germany, it was just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of communism. So I was in that part of Germany. So everything was so different. It was like an entirely different world, and nobody could speak English because they'd all learned Russian. So I had to really work hard to learn a new language. And yeah, after a year or so, I felt like I'd been away for more like 10 years because I'd had so many new experiences, and I was genuinely amazed that people were doing the same jobs. And I went in the shops, and there was the same people working in the shops. Think, why are they still working here after all this time? But of course, for in normal circumstances, a year is not particularly a long stretch of time.
Yeah, geez, eh? And then there's so much other things in the book. I mean, we won't be able to get into it, but there was the precognition. You go into a section of precognition, and which was very fascinating. I love that. I mean, Emanuel Swedenborg. I love that story. Emanuel Swedenborg. He had that. There was this one guy that really wanted to get in touch with him and have a meeting with him, and he obviously there was in those days the letters or whatever, and he sends him a letter. He said, "Can I please meet you? But I've got to go abroad on this one thing, and I'm going to come back. It's only like It's going to be 6 months until I get back. So can we have a meeting then?" And he writes back and he goes, "No, that's going to be too late because I'll be dead by then. I'm going to die next month."
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Then, geez, and then you mentioned another. Anyway, but then your dad, your dad had the same experience.
Yeah, my dad had the same experience. I mean, there's a whole kind of subset of precognitive experiences with people predicting the date of their death. And my dad, he had Parkinson's disease, but he wasn't seriously ill. Nobody expected him to die. But a week before his actual death, his best friend visited him, and he'd just woken up from a sleep, so he was a bit kind of slightly, slightly delirious. But he said to his friend, "I've just found out when I'm going to die. I'm going to die next Thursday." And his friend said, "Really? How do you know?" And he said, "I've seen it." He said, "I've seen this book where the date of everybody's death is written down." So he said to his friend, "I can tell you when you're going to die if you like." And his friend said, "No, no, no, don't want to know. Don't tell me." So his friend didn't think any more of it. But 3 days later, my dad developed pneumonia, kind of out of the blue. And he did die on that Thursday, just as he predicted. So, his friend was completely shell-shocked by it. But it's not uncommon that, there are lots of other cases like Emanuel Swedenborg, as you mentioned.
Yes.
So, yeah, it seems to be, I think that precognition definitely exists. There are so many, interesting cases which can't be explained in other ways. And there's a lot of scientific evidence from, laboratory type experiments too.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of precognition experiences. I did this one meditation for like 3 months, twice a day, every day. Actually, we did an episode on it. And I started getting precognition experiences. I know it's a real thing. It was the most
Yeah.
amazing thing ever. I was like, it was so exciting because I was just in my meditation. I'd go, "What am I going to see tomorrow?" And I'd get an image and I'd see that thing the next day. It was the most, but then because I knew that this was a real thing, I got so excited. I started trying all these other things like out of body experiences. I went on this whole tangent. I was doing every minute because then I wanted the stronger meditation, I wanted the better thing, and I'm chasing this and chasing that. And I come from an addiction background, so it was like my addict mind was just like, "Oh my God." And then I've never had that experience since, and it's been 5 years, and I've been
Oh,
like,
right.
get it back, and I don't know how to get it back. No, but
Mm. Did it happen a lot, or was it just once?
no, it happened every day for like
Every
months.
day?
I would be
Oh,
like,
wow.
it started off. I was doing this third eye meditation. I was imagining this energy going up my head into my third eye, and I was like doing it. I was concentrating so intensely. But that's the funny thing about people say this meditation thing's about just like relaxing and like focusing your breath and that. I've had the best meditations when I concentrate like when I just think I put every energy into this thing and I just concentrate so hard on it. Like
Hmm.
and that's all I'm doing, and it's like it's quite exhausting until like I'm thinking of this energy coming up my head into the third eye, and I was doing it like every morning, every night, and then after a while, like I mean, but it was so wonderful because like I got this like it's this intense feeling in my head, and then all of a sudden my body started shaking like quite vigorously like this. The one day it was like whoa, and it felt amazing. And also when
Mm.
I used to go to bed at night, my whole body I'd feel this slight vibration in my whole body, and I actually got a bit scared because I was thinking, "Oh my God, what if I get Parkinson's disease?" I started getting really worried about it,
Right.
and I'm actually I started thinking maybe it was looking back on it, like I was thinking maybe it was when I was doing that meditation, but then um, I was on a job like quite far away, and we had to travel from this one where we were doing this shoot. I'm in the film industry, so we're doing a shoot. We're interviewing someone about something, and we had to travel to the airport or the town that we're going to stay the night in to get to the airport the next day. And the people said, "Be careful," because it was getting dark. They said, "Be careful. There's lots of cars on the road, and just be careful." So I saw this
Mm.
picture of a dead car with the car there, everything. So we're driving along, and then we came across the dead car, and I was like, "Oh my God, I saw that." And then my rational mind came in, and I was like, "No, they said the car's on the road. You made a picture in your head, and coincidence, there
Mm.
it is." Like, but I had this like knowing that it was what I saw.
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, that's interesting." So then I said, "Okay, well, if that was real, when I get to the next town, what am I going to see?" and then I saw orange. It said orange, and with the word orange.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to the next town, but I didn't see anything, right? And then I got home to Cape Town, and the next day I was taking my daughter out on this boat ride, and we came across this big ship in the harbor, and on the side of it was a huge square, orange square, and it said underneath it orange,
Oh,
which is
wow.
the network in Botswana, the cell phone network. It was a
Mm,
network orange. So I was like,
wow.
oh, God, this is amazing. So I went home, and every evening when I was doing my meditation, like I'll do it in the morning, in the evening, I'd say, what am I gonna see tomorrow? And then like I'd see like a spider. Then I would go the next day I'm on the shoot and I'm like thinking, oh, a spider, obviously I'm gonna see a spider, like a spider. So like you see a spider
Mm,
anyway. But then I needed to go to the bathroom in this like fancy house. Like it was so fancy. And then I walked into the bathroom and there's like pictures all over the wall, like thousands of pictures. But in the middle of the wall, there's this picture that was like, I don't know, like half a meter by half a meter with this spider, like a real
mm,
live spider, probably like almost the size of my hand and bigger, in the middle of it, just like facing me while I'm having a wee.
mm.
Um,
Wow.
and I mean, I was just having these experience, like it just happened over every day. I would say, like, what am I going to see tomorrow? You know, the thing is that it got so crazy was like, I would be like, what am I going to see tomorrow? And I would be like traveling to a town the next day, and I would see like a fountain with all this mosaic patterns or whatever, and the water spraying out. And I'd be like, okay, cool, fountain with all the colorful mosaic patterns. And then, but then I had to get to this town the next day. So I'd spend about 15 minutes looking at Airbnbs. And I'm like looking at these Airbnbs, and I'm so indecisive a lot of the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this one's nice, but this one's cheaper. This one's nicer. So
Yeah.
I'm driving myself crazy. Like, oh, but what if I get there and the thing, this one, I can't make up my mind. I'm like going. So eventually, I just choose one. Next day, I go there and I get to the place where I'm staying, this Airbnb, and there's the freaking waterfall with the mosaic and the
Oh,
exactly how
wow.
it. And I'm thinking, and then I was like, but what was all of the fuss about me? I was going to end up here anyway. So what is all this indecisiveness?
Yeah, it's
So it
weird, isn't it?
started making me think, like, how much free choice do I really have? How much do
Yeah.
I? Because
I
like
write about it in the book, and that's one of
it
the
happened. It was going to happen. So like maybe I should just
yeah.
don't do anything because everything's going to happen anyway. And why
Yeah,
do
that's
I?
it's a definite issue with precognition, because if the future is preordained, then we don't have free will. We're kind of inexorably drawn towards what's destined to happen. But on the other hand, that there are some experiences. Have you ever had the experience where you have a dream and you see yourself maybe having an accident, and then a couple of days later you see the scene and you realize, oh wow, this is where I had my accident in my dream. I've got to avoid that tree, or I've got to avoid that car. So that happens quite commonly where people see themselves having accidents, and then they recognize the accident a couple of days later, and they take avoidant action. So that suggests that it's not totally predetermined. There's a bit of variation. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably the case, that yeah, it's about probability. It's not definitely fixed. That kind of fits
Mm.
with the physics of it too, because in quantum physics, nothing's definite. Everything's probable or potential. So
Yeah,
I think,
it's probable, but it can be changed if you can recognize it.
yeah, that's right. So it's not totally fixed. It's about kind of a tendency or a pattern, but it's not totally set in stone.
Yes, because that's what whole Joe Dispenza's whole philosophy is. It's like everything, all of those possibilities actually exist in the quantum field. They're all there. So like
Hmm.
when you when you're driving down the road, there's the possibility of you like turning into the other car and killing yourself, going straight, maybe just stopping on the side of the road to do the view. It's all there in the quantum field, but like your choice will like manifest it, your choice. So that's why this whole thing is, if you want something to happen, like if you
Hmm.
want that dream house, or do you want that job, or that vacation, whatever, you've
Hmm.
got to like physically, mentally dream it, or like in your meditation or after your meditation, like perceive it in your head so clearly that
Hmm.
your neural pathways change to that, or like so that possibility in the quantum field actually manifests because you manifested before it in your imagination, like so
Yeah.
fully. And it's funny because me and Lee study Rosicrucianism,
Oh
and
yeah.
and like all these manifestation classes, like sometimes it's like like $1,000 to do the bloody Joe Dispenza like class, or like it's this class online is like it's like $500, and it's like ridiculous amounts. And I'm studying my monographs the other day, and it's like I spend like, I think, for what, to do the Rosicrucian like course, it's like probably like $100 a year, right?
Right.
And it has that in the monograph. It's saying exactly the whole manifest like technique that all of these manifesting people are like spending thousands and thousands of dollars. Like,
Right.
they probably got it out of there because, I mean, supposedly Rosicrucians, it's been around for thousands of years. It comes from the Egyptians. So it's
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
Yeah. Another thing about this is that, there are many near-death experiences where people, they feel that they have a choice about whether to return to their body or whether to remain in this different reality. And a lot of the time they feel very comfortable, they feel very peaceful in this kind of spacious reality. That they don't really want to go back to the earth because everything's more kind of difficult and more dense down there. But they often feel that they want to go back for the sake of their relatives, for the children or for their loved ones who will grieve for them if they die. But they're often told, if you go back, this is how your life will turn out. This is the pattern of your future if you come back. So obviously there's a choice because they don't have to go back. They could decide to remain where they are and die, in which case their future would not materialize. So again, it's about potentiality. It's a kind of conditional future rather than one which is fixed.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, geez, I wanted to go into that retro, because you spoke about retrocognition. Retrocognition. I mean, I've heard it before, but I didn't really understand it. And it's really fascinating because everything is actually happening at once, the past, present, and the future. In your book, you say with retrocausation, you can actually change the past.
Well, that's the theory. I mean, there are two things here. The retrocognition is kind of the reverse thing to precognition. It's when you travel back to previous times in your life. And it's not just memory, it's actually reliving and re-experiencing previous times or events of your life. A good example is the life review. Some people, when they're close to death or during a near-death experience, they have a life review when they re-experience every incident of their life, or sometimes just the most significant incidents of their lives. And they don't just remember them; they actually relive them in massive detail. So it's somehow as if those experiences still exist. It's somehow as if the past is still there, and we can travel back to it in certain states of consciousness. And that can happen. I often get a thing where I'm hovering on the brink of sleep. Maybe I go for a doze in the afternoon, and I'm hovering on the brink of sleep in that hypnagogic state. And I often feel as though I'm back at previous times in my life. I'm back to the place I lived in 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and I can feel and sense everything exactly as it was then, as if I've really actually returned to that situation. And I think that is retrocognition. And I also think that when some reports of ghosts are a kind of retrocognition, when we travel back to previous times in history or witness events or people from previous times. So that's retrocognition. And then there's a theory in physics which is called retrocausation, which is when events from the future can affect the present, or waves from the present can travel back into the past and affect the past. So the past isn't fixed. The past can be affected by what happens in the present, in the same way that the present can be affected by what happens in the future. So there's no kind of separate realm of time. The past, present, and future are all interconnected and can affect each other.
Yeah, because when you were talking about it in the book, I thought it was like the Mandela effect. Like, I don't know if you heard about the Mandela effect?
I've heard of it. Can you explain it just in case?
It started because there was a stage where everyone thought Mandela got out of. Oh no, he died in prison. That he died.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah.
So everyone thought he died in prison, but then, he didn't die in prison, and then people were like, "What?" Later they're like, "But we were sure, we saw it on the news. He died in prison. It actually happened." Like, they were so believed that. And it's like a lot of things, like Sex in the City. Is it Sex and the City or Sex in the City?
Right.
Well, which one do you think it is?
Which one do I think it is? I think it's sex and the city.
Well, let's check what, because there's a whole lot of examples like, okay, sex. You say sex and the city.
Yeah. I'm sure I remember that from watching it years ago.
But there's a lot of stuff. I think there's a lot of people.
It's Sex and the City, but okay, but then it's like, okay, the Monopoly guy, does he have a monocle or does he not have a does he have a monocle?
Yeah, I think I remember him having one, but I think in the new ones they don't. So I think there's a lot of people that've got a bit of a different past.
Well, apparently he never had a monocle.
I always remember him having.
Anyways, so it's basically these examples where it feels like there's been like we all think of something. I mean, there's lots of people can check it out on the internet and see all the examples, but we all, as a collective consciousness, think that it was this way. But if you actually go look at the history on, you see, it actually wasn't like that at all. I mean, I'm not talking about fake news and propaganda and like that, but it's like small things like, like the example, the Sex in the City. We all thought it was sex in the city, and then it's actually sex and the city. I mean, there's silly examples, but so that's the Mandela effect. So when I saw that, so it's almost like saying that it's like somehow the past got changed, like say, like almost like someone went into the future, the past, and changed it to get some other outcome in the future because it wasn't going in or there was some kind of glitch in the matrix, and then we all thought that it was that, but it wasn't, or something changed. I don't know, got all these theories behind it, but
in theory, it sounds plausible because it would be a kind of a macrocosmic example of retrocausation. I mean, there's a big debate about whether you can apply what happens in the microcosmic realm of quantum physics to the macrocosmic realm of everyday life. But if you could, that would make some sense.
Yeah. But yeah, Steve, I see our hour's up there.
Yeah.
So it's gone very quickly, hasn't it? So that's another example of the variability of time.
Must have been a good one then.
It's, as they say, time goes quickly when you're having fun. So
there's all these examples in your book about absorption and unabsorption, like the time. So we must have been very absorbed. Also, Steve, I just want to just apologize for when we started this podcast. We just jumped in. Usually we would I didn't even introduce Lee. I was just like, we just went straight into it. He didn't even because when I got here, I almost didn't make this podcast because there was a fire. There's two roads that get into my house.
Oh wow!
And there was a fire on the mountain, and so this road was blocked. And then when I went the other way, there was a whole backlog of cars coming over the other way. And also in Cape Town, because of the tourist season, it's just chock-a-block with cars. So I almost didn't make this podcast. So when I came in here, I was so out of it. I was just like, geez, put the thing on, set up the thing. Geez, Steve, put him in. And then he was like, hey, Steve, you're cool. He's just tell us about your book.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, I'm sure it was fine. Yeah, I can't remember what happened at the beginning now, but I'm sure it was fine. Oh, so yeah, you had a storm. You got a storm as well. You got a flood. You said as well.
Yeah. So then the storm happened. I'm hoping to put the fire out that was on the mountain there. But
so you're really being hit hard by Mother Nature.
Oh, interesting, man. So, but Steve, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and I can't wait to read your other books. So, and then maybe hopefully we'll have you on again with another book if you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just let me know. Yeah, once you've 100%. Taken a look. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve, for your time, man. Much appreciated.
No, thank you. You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All the best.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Steve. All
Cool, man. Awesome. That was very interesting. Just lots to do about time and kind of, where we see things going. And I think it's got a lot to do with focusing. In high tension things, you focus a lot. And I think everything just seems to slow down when you focus properly.
Yeah, I think it's like a high state of focusness. But I wish I could actually...
I've experienced it, so I know. I understand it. I do.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. Oh. But anyway, dude, thanks to Span for your time, and it's been very interesting for our first episode for season 3. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. Hit that like and subscribe to our YouTube. YouTube's growing very nicely. Thanks, guys, for listening, and girls for listening. You can get us on Podbean and Apple Podcasts and all the rest of it as well. And yeah. So hit that like and subscribe, and we'll check you next week. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Cheers, Lee.
Cheers, man.